I think that they made it very clear that education was very important.
Okay.
If you want to advance in society, if you want to get a better job, if you want to get more opportunities open to you, then you'd have to take your education very seriously.
Okay.
I would walk around the house with my book and study because it was really easy to engage with the material while we're doing physical activity. So it's not like you're laying down in the bed and you're about to fall asleep studying. But because you're physically active, it helps to get your mind running and then it just engages you more. So definitely I came 6th national in chemistry, so 6th in Jamaica. I came 1st in French in Jamaica and I came 2nd in French in the region. I think for biology I came top 25 and for another subject I came top 25. Bonjour tout le monde. Si vous voulez partager le vidéo avec tes amis, aimez le vidéo et abonnez à la chaîne.
Thank you very much.
In Office with Dr. Jevon Samuels.
Good day, viewers. Welcome to another episode of In Office. I am Dr. Jevon Samuels, and today we'll be discussing requirement for medical school as well as studying techniques and the different subjects that will be required. So, in office with me today, I have Mr. Dondré McFarlane. Welcome to the show. Alright, good. Alright, so Mr. McFarlane actually is the ideal candidate for this discussion because he was recently accepted into medical school both locally and overseas. So it's just fitting that we have a discussion about the requirements with him and also how he go about studying from primary school, high school and the Cape level as well. So normally MBBS program or the medical science program, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery is one of the most competitive degrees programs to get into in any university because it normally requires to get to A's or grade 1s as we say in the Caribbean, and also we have to do like the hardcore science subjects such as the chemistry, biology, physics. They also have to do mathematics and CSEC and English language at the CSEC or O level in the Caribbean, right? So you need at least those 5 CSEC subjects, 5 or more CSEC subjects, but they must include the 5 that I've listed so far. So they must include mathematics, English language, biology, chemistry, and physics, right? Plus if you have additional subjects at CSEC level, the additional will be welcome, alright? Now we also need to have CAPE subjects, and you need CAPE or A-level subjects. You need at least 2 units of biology, so both unit 1 and unit 2 at CAPE. You also need 2 units of chemistry, both unit 1 and unit 2 at CAPE, and you need a 3rd subject. Some students do physics, some do mathematics, but you can be at any other 3rd subject, but 2 units of it of course, right? And then plus or minus the language component, which most students normally do. So that's a prerequisite to get you for medical school in Jamaica. And overseas you might have similar requirements, but definitely you will need to do the natural sciences, that's for sure, so the biology, chemistry and the physics. Now also because medicine is a competitive program, if for example you have completed a CAPE level and you didn't get A's or B's and you're not qualified to get into medical school, all is not lost at that level because you can still go ahead and transfer from the 1st year of natural science program, so you can enter university in a natural science program and do chemistry, biology, mathematics or physics, etc. And if you actually have a high GPA, like on the dean's list, I have a GPA of in the upper class region, then you can actually transfer from 1st year of university. Alternatively, I can track back and add a little. If, for example, the student don't want to go to CAPE, they could also go to university from their CSEC and do a preliminary course in the natural sciences as well. And if they get a high GPA at all A's, then they can matriculate into medical school. And it can even go on and on. So for example, if we have the student didn't get good high GPA after the 1st year of natural science, they can go and complete their degree, and if they graduate their 1st class honors preferably, or even an upper 2nd class honors, sometimes the medical faculty will take those students as well. And then some extreme students may even do master's degree in natural science and then transfer to medical field, or some persons may do like the basic medical degrees such as biochemistry, pharmacology, or anatomy, and those students, if they get at first class honors, can also be transferred to medical school. So the studying technique aspect, I will leave my guest here to go fully into the studying technique, alright? And as I said before, he basically is the ideal candidate because he actually would have gone through the period completed in just this year that has passed, alright? So welcome once more, Mr. McFarlane.
Thank you for having me. So just a little bit of my background. I used to go to Half a Tree Primary, and I'm a recent graduate of Campion College. So I would have gone through doing both CSEC and CAPE at Campion College. So a bit of advice starting with primary school. I would have graduated in 2017, so I would have done GSAT, but then that would have changed to PEP. But it still has a similar format. It's just slightly different in the fact that they want you to do more reasoning questions. But I'd say that my main advice in terms of studying for PEP would definitely be going through past paper questions. I know that my mother and we went through so many different past papers, and it's really the ideal way to get practice because these would have been similar questions that you would have done beforehand, the years would have done prior.
Yes.
So doing that with your parents would instill a lot of confidence. And I think as well, if you have a good friend group that is willing to work with you on these questions, that can be very helpful.
Okay.
Because a collaborative environment is very good for engaging you, keeping you studying for longer, and it benefits more students than just you yourself. As well, you can learn from your peers, so maybe you might struggle on a question that they might be better at and they can help you. I also think that collaborating with your teacher is very important. I know that my teacher, she was very instrumental for assisting me. Like we did extra classes before, so I think they went up to either 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock.
This is, sorry to cut you, but this is at primary school?
Yes, this is still at primary school level. So she had done these classes voluntarily, so we didn't have to pay anything. And the parents, they would have banded together and gotten little snacks for the students. So some tea and some Oreo. And we basically were just drilling questions and going through. So it's very important to continually be practicing. Also writing notes, it's very important. You don't have to write down every single word that the teacher says, of course. But just having those notes and having something that you can go through after the teacher taught it is very good for cementing that information in your head. And the main thing about notes is that you have to continually go through it. So you can't just reread it one day after the teacher taught it and then you have it in your head. So you can read it the first day after, can skip a day, can read it again. And then the more times that you go through the notes, the less periods that you have to spend rereading it, because that information will be cemented in your head. So let's say for instance, you got notes about factorization on Monday.
Yes.
Can practice some questions on Monday, then you can practice on Tuesday, and then you can go back on Friday. And once you know that you have the concept, then maybe you can do it on a weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly basis. So when it comes time to actually reread the information for PEP, you know that you already have the concepts in your head and it's just basically refreshing yourself on the information. So the main study tips that I would give is definitely write your notes and reread them incrementally. Going through past papers, that's going to be the best way to ensure that you're confident. And also what you can do as well is that you have 2 different modes that you can do the past papers in. So you can do it in a relaxed mode, maybe you can have YouTube up and sometimes research things or have your book beside you. And then another thing that's important is that you can do it under exam conditions. So you'd have the timer, you'd have your pencil and pens, and you won't have any additional from a material that you wouldn't have in the exam. And then you do it under those conditions and you can mark it if you have the mark scheme. So basically you have a better sense of how you would do in the exam. Different areas that you can prepare more on. Like if you weren't as strong in the math as in the English, then you know that you'd be spending more time practicing math over English. Or maybe if you need to read a certain topic in social studies or science, then you know that you can go through that as well.
Now, it's easier said than done, right? So to have this discipline to be reading your notes like on a daily basis, especially like, for example, some persons might not be in the environment which is so study friendly. For example, their home setting might be a little bit noisy or crowded. How would you maneuver those conditions if the environment is not study friendly at the primary level?
So I definitely say that my environment was kind of similar, not completely similar, but my parents, they didn't really have the financial resources to be doing private tutoring, to send into all these extra classes. So it was just mainly either me on my own studying the material, or sometimes, as I said before, I get help from my mother. So the main thing to do is just to have an area designated to study. So sometimes you can just have a little corner in the living room away from distractions, or maybe if you have a spare room or just some kind of empty space that's free from distractions, then you just have to sit down with your book and go through it and ensure that you learn the concepts. Another thing that I used to do a lot as well was that I would walk around the house with my book and study, because it was really easy to engage with the material while we're doing physical activity. So it's not like you're laying down in the bed and you're about to fall asleep studying, but because you're physically active, it helps to get your mind running, and then it just engages you more. So definitely you can try getting that secluded area, and even if you don't have that space, then you can try, as I said before, maybe walking around the house. Maybe if you have a neighbor who has that kind of environment as well, then you can speak with your neighbor, and then sometimes they can allow you to study over at their house. Or even you can spend extra time after school studying at school, maybe in the library or in a secluded classroom, and then you can arrange for pickup or going home at a later time.
Okay. So I'm here listening to you, and then I was thinking to myself that you're a genius and you don't need to study. But but based on what you're saying, you basically study a lot from primary school, because if I remember serving right, when I was at primary school, I didn't really have that discipline. The type of study that you're telling me that you were doing from primary school, sometimes at even like 5th form or cable level or university, that discipline would come in. So how did you manage to have that discipline from such a tender age?
The main reason I would say would be from my parents. I think that they made it very clear that education was very important. If you want to advance in society, if you want to get a better job, if you want to get more opportunities open to you, then you'd have to take your education very seriously. There are certain jobs that, while we appreciate, they just might not suit you and might not afford the kind of lifestyle that you would prefer to live. So having that education is very important, and it does start from a younger age. It was way easier to sit down for hours on end studying for CSEC or staying up till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock finishing work for CAPE, because from younger I already had these principles, I already had these study techniques and these methods down. So I knew that once you went up in level, it wasn't really so jarring of a transition. So you already know that, okay, I need to write my notes, I need to study, I need to go over it frequently. I can sometimes get in contact with my teacher. I know that going through past papers are important. So when you go up and you have CSEC to do, when you're going through past papers, then you know that you can find different websites that have the different past papers. I know that for just going a little bit into CSEC, that for each subject I would have done a minimum of 10 past papers.
10 years.
So probably when I did CSEC, it was 2022. So the minimum I would have done would have been from 2011 going up to 2021. And that wasn't so jarring, because, as I said, already going through past papers for GSAT, I would have been used to going through that kind of environment and that study rigor.
Now, it's in terms, you're telling that you're basically discussed that you're studying every day, basically. So, did you find time to do like extracurricular activity and sporting activities?
Yes, I was a part of debate, I was a part of science club, I was part of Builders Club, and as well I was the head boy of primary school. So you know that comes with a lot of additional work. Debate, you have to go home, you have to draft a speech, you have to do it with the debate coach. Science club, sometimes there were projects, or you'd have to come in on the weekends. And then Builders Club, they had their own little initiatives. And as well, being the head boy, you have to do different presentations or maybe go to different schools and stuff like that. So it definitely calls for some kind of self-discipline, because it really limits your time the more extracurriculars that you do. But as well, I think that doing extracurriculars is very important, because it makes your report, your transcript look that much better.
Okay.
You have a student who's able to balance science club and builders club with getting good grades, as opposed to a student who just solely focus on studies. One student would be objectively stronger than the other one
Okay.
because they were better at time management and doing multiple activities. And there are certain skills and certain connections that you can get from being a part of these clubs.
Okay.
So I know that doing builders clubs, a lot of times you go on trips with other students. So you can interact with other students, you can learn from them the different study techniques. Maybe you can even get a teacher where you can get a contact who can better assist you with that subject.
Okay.
And science club, I know that I went to a hotel to do a presentation and met one of the ministers.
Okay.
So it was just a fun experience, but also it exposes you to material that you can also learn as well. So it's not just doing something that's out of the framework of PEP, or what I would have done is GSAT, but it would have been in addition to. So it would have been really helpful to compounding that knowledge as opposed to being isolated.
Okay. All right. So luckily for you, you had a peer. You had parents. Especially you spoke about your mom. She was literate and would be able to go through the material. But what if like a primary school student don't have the parent that can read and write and help them properly? How if you were in that situation, do you think you would have turned out just the same?
I think that it would definitely be another hurdle to go over, but you have to be aware of your different support groups. I know that not everyone has the same access to such a strong support group, but remember it takes a village to raise a child. So you have neighbors maybe who might be a part of different professions. I know that my neighbor, Jenny, she had a daughter who went to Campion.
Okay.
So it would have been very easy for me to get in contact with her or her daughter, and then to have gotten that help from her. So maybe you have individuals in your neighborhood. Maybe you can call on individuals at your church as well. So church elders or maybe older teenagers would be willing to afford that time. And as well, you can definitely get the help from teenagers, because I know a lot of them would be doing extracurriculars such as volunteering for the sake of school, applying overseas, and both applying to UA, you need to have those volunteer hours. So I know that those students will be especially willing to help. And even then you can reach out to your teachers, you can reach out to your guidance counselors. You can even reach out to some high schools, because currently Campion College has an initiative which was started by a student. It's called the PEP Prep program, which I did for 1 year, where they teach students at a particular school, grade 6 student, PEP material.
Okay.
So even then you can go out and even reach out to high schools to see if any of the students would be willing to do volunteer service hours for you in terms, and then you get that help.
Okay, so parents, I hope you are taking note. Very interesting point here. All right. Now, also want to touch on the issue of primary school versus a prep school, because we know that in the primary school settings, a government setting, the classroom is a little bit more crowded than a prep school or a private school. But you are able to basically outperform students in a prep school, so I really give you that extra plus where you are concerned. So in terms of, I know that you had gone to Campion, so more than 90% of your classmates most likely would have gone to a private primary school, or they're actually some relative of some doctor, politician, lawyer, or some wealthy background. So how were you able to fit in such a system, especially at Campion, knowing that you were coming from a primary school going into to Campion, which is a prestigious high school?
It can definitely be intimidating to be interacting with certain individuals of that caliber. Like you have students of ministers, students of government workers, students of lawyers. But as well, there are definitely individuals who you can just fit in with. Not everyone is of that high status that you might feel intimidated by. But just by joining clubs, interacting with your peers, you can make a genuine connection with them. And they don't necessarily see your value based on where you come from. A lot of my peers, even my best friends, sometimes you might ask them, which school did Dondré used to go to? And they probably wouldn't even remember that I went to a primary school. Or a lot of them have it that I actually went to a prep school. If I never mentioned to them, that I went to halfway tree. So they definitely don't see a value in what school you're coming from or your parents' financial background. They take a lot of value in you as a person. So if you're kind-hearted, if you're outgoing, if you like to play sports, there's definitely a community for you. And just interacting with them without that pre-notion that, oh, they're gonna not like me because my parents don't have this money or they're not educated like that. You can definitely find your community at schools like that.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you mentioned the point about they don't know that you didn't go to a prep school, alright? Because that's the point I want to touch on next, alright? You'd have been to a primary school where you'd have kids from inner city and a wider background. So you know that most of the students there probably are from a low socioeconomic background, they're from inner city, etc. And their probably English would have been more broken than, say, for example, students that go to prep school or private school. So how were you able to have such a good command of English language when you're in an environment which they were probably mainly using Creole?
I say that it definitely starts from a younger age, just going through different speaking drills, exposing yourself to high level literary material, because I know that I think from like grade 2, I would have been reading 3 levels, 4 levels ahead of my grade reading level. So it's very important that you expose yourself to these higher materials. And it's not necessarily a bad thing whether you speak that kind of broken Jamaican Creole as opposed to standard English, because going into campaign, a lot of the students, they would just speak Jamaican Creole. You definitely have this wide range where you have people who just speak that perfect standard English, and then you have students who feel comfortable just speaking that Jamaican Creole. So definitely in Jamaica there is more acceptance, especially at those high levels, for Jamaican Creole. So it's not something to be intimidated by. My only advice would just be to ensure that it doesn't really interfere too much with your writing. So you might be speaking to your friends in Jamaican Creole, but you know that once it comes down to writing English language and English literature, then you need to make sure that you have a good command of that language. So definitely practice writing, exposing yourself to a high level material would be a great way to just further cement your command of the language. It doesn't have to be something that you necessarily speak all the time, but it definitely has to be something that you have to practice.
Okay. Alright. So when I interact with your peers, because I used to teach at chemistry privately, right? And some other students from that class that would have known it from primary school, they were just seen as this genius, alright? Do you think that you had you're gifted differently to manage the material over other students, or just feel that it's just the dedication, the hours that they put in would have caused the difference?
I definitely think that it's more so effort than gift. Of course, gift can come into play because some students are just more inclined to studying, but some students would be more inclined to doing sports or doing the arts. So that definitely can come into play. But I do think a lot of the time it comes down to your dedication. Because even though my peers might have viewed me as some genius, or my parents or my siblings, there were definitely individuals at Campion who I looked up to, because currently right now I know 3 students who used to go to Campion who's currently going to MIT, and I know another student who's going to Princeton. So there are definitely students who you'd find that I wouldn't even see myself as a genius compared to them, but I know the hard work that they would have put in. I know that they would have taken advantage of different opportunities like the SPICE program, where they would have gone to a different country in the Caribbean and would have taken part in different science clubs and whatnot. So I definitely see it as more so the work you put in, because I know that these students who I would have looked up to as the geniuses, they put in a lot of hours studying, they took part in a lot of clubs. Maybe they were the president of math club, or they led robotics. I know that one of the students who went to MIT, she was a part of the robotics team, and I think they came second in the region. They went overseas and did a competition. So it definitely has more so to do with the effort and the dedication. I know that a lot of students might get bored of it, might grow tiresome. But really, if you love sciences, if you love math, if you can find a way to incorporate it in your daily life, and I think that just brings it more to life and just makes it more of a memorable experience that you don't really view as a drag study, but you look forward to.
Okay. Alright, then we have enough of primary school level now, so we can move on to campaign. So remember that you went to primary school, so you earned a spot in campaign. You did not go to a feeder school for campaign, alright? So I don't want the viewers to think that, oh, he went to a school that would just basically be feeding campaign, alright? Or you had the background. You actually would have to do pretty well because you were at a disadvantage in some aspect in terms of the school that they went, alright? So tell me about like, the first year at campaign, how you adjust to the different environment.
So the first year at campaign, I would honestly say that it wasn't really that bad to adjust. The most jarring thing would have been the number of subjects that you do compared to grade 5, because I would have done social studies, science, math, comm studies, and that would have mainly be it. But when you go to high school, then you're doing geography, you're doing history, you're doing foreign languages like Spanish, French. Campion, they used to do Latin, so that's another language. You have PE, that's mandatory. So there's just a wider array of subjects that you have to do. But the good thing about it is that at that level, of course, it would be introductory. So just to expose the students to different interests they might have. So while you may be limited to social studies or science at primary school, prep school, now you have this wide array. You can take part in history and you might find more of a love for history or geography, or you can take part in even music or drama or find yourself more drawn towards those subjects. So it's definitely jarring just doing that wide array of subjects coming from such a limited pool. But because of the introductory level, I feel like I was able to manage it because you just spend just a little bit amount of time with each subject, and that usually was good enough to get you through with the subject. So it was definitely quite a transition at first. But just because of the level, it definitely allows you to ease in more, even though it might seem very overwhelming or intimidating at first.
Okay. Alright, so move on to like second form, third form now when you're done. Probably third form you started to do the science subject like the chemistry, biology, physics, introduction, that level. Alright, so at third form now you will have done like subjects from the sciences, arts and business. So at that point, what you wanted to become like a career path you were thinking of?
So at that point, I had made up my mind that I definitely wanted to be a doctor. I wasn't really sure of what I wanted to specialize in, but I knew that I wanted to be a part of the medical field because mainly I was just drawn towards the sciences. I didn't really like history, I didn't really like geography. Not to say that I did bad in them, but just sitting down and reading them, I just didn't really find it as interesting as subjects like biology. When you sit down and do biology or chemistry, you get to be in the lab, you get to interact with all these chemicals and materials. Biology involves a lot of trips going outside, so in sixth form we went on a trip to the Port Royal Marine Lab, and that would have been such a fun experience. So I definitely say that I was just more inclined to do the sciences over the business at that level.
Alright. So tell us now like the studying techniques for the sciences from third form. I would have passed through the CSEC level. So just tell us how you go about like studying, like say chemistry. Let's start chemistry first.
Okay, so I'd say that for each subject there's a slight difference in how you'd study. So my main approach to chemistry would have been using the study guide and mainly memorizing reactions, memorizing mechanisms. That's the main way to go about chemistry. It really commands you to have a good grasp of a concept and to be able to apply it. And then moving on to biology, I think biology has more to do with the breadth of knowledge. So not necessarily going in depth, but more so how much more you need to know. So for chemistry, while there might be 10 reactions that you need to know, for biology there would be like 15 different topics that you need to know. But the breadth of knowledge, it wouldn't really go that deep. So you'd have to do a lot more reading when it comes on to biology, but chemistry was definitely more practice and more application. And then moving on to physics, I think that it's a good mixture of both. So there's a lot of reading that you have to do, but then you also have to know the concepts behind it. So I feel like chemistry and physics, those subjects really commanded more application, more understanding of concepts, while biology really more so had to do with reading and your breadth of knowledge as opposed to the depth of knowledge.
Okay, and then what about mathematics and English?
Mathematics was mainly just practicing. So every moment that you get, you just practice. Because the main thing about mathematics is that you have different forms of a question. So it's not necessarily on a specific question by question basis, but you have different forms. So take for instance, learning how to factorize. You have different ways to learn how to factorize. You can do the method of differences. So let's say you have x squared minus 9. You'd recognize that that's just x squared minus 3 squared, so you can just use the method x plus 3, x minus 3, and you factorize it.
Okay.
Then you have another method that requires you to, let's say for instance, you have a formula or an equation in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. You need to multiply a by c and then find the factors to find b, and then you do it by that method. And then you have another one where you can't use the first two, so you'd have to use the quadratic formula.
Okay.
Your job will be able to identify which one you'd have to do. And then as long as you know the steps, so as long as you know how to either factorize by differences, use the AC method, or know the quadratic formula, then you know that your only job when you get that paper in front of you would be to able to identify what type of question this was. And then based on the practice that you do with that type of question, then you'd be able to do it. And then I'd say for English, differentiating English language from English literature,
Yes.
I'd say for English language, it's just mainly reading, mainly expanding your vocabulary and learning how to write. So just using up your adverbs, learning different adverbs so that you can express yourself. Like instead of just saying, I'm good, I'm bad, you know that high levels, you know that you have more descriptive words that you can use that's more precise, more appropriate. And then for English
Just an example.
Okay, so you can say,
Yeah,
oh, I'm excited to study biology, I'm eager to study biology, I'm keen to. So you just have more specific verbs, specific adjectives that you can use. Like, I quickly left the station, I hurriedly left the station. You have a rowdy storm, maybe you can use boisterous, tempestuous.
Okay.
So you definitely can expand your vocabulary, and that comes from reading different materials. So you might read research papers, you might read more storybooks, but just expanding your vocabulary can do a really good job, as well as understanding subject structure or sentence structure. So you know that when you have a paragraph and you're writing in English language, a lot of times teachers will tell you to use the peel method. So you start with your point, you use your evidence, you use your examples, and you link it back. So definitely having that sentence structure down and having the vocabulary to go along with it, then your sentences would stand out more, and just the overall organization and content would be more appropriate for that level as opposed to primary school. And then for literature, I really enjoy doing literature because I really enjoy analyzing the different texts, going through different themes. So I'd say for literature that sometimes it can be very boring because you don't like the books that you get.
Okay.
I know that for those kind of books, I'd have to really power through it to do it. But for literature, for the books that you really do enjoy, I think that it's just taking the time to sit down with the book to analyze the different themes. I think that you can have a very fun time with that.
Okay.
I know that reading Breath, Ice, Memory, which is a book that I had to do for CSEC, I'd read it 2 times, 3 times.
Okay.
And I'd gone through different themes, and I really enjoyed the themes that were brought up and looking at how the themes link back to each other.
Yes.
It was just a really fun experience. So just read would definitely be your tips for English.
Alright, so take us through like the fifth form campaign from September to exam day. How did it function with that final year?
So from fifth form, beginning of fifth form, you know that it's time for CSEC.
Yeah.
There was definitely no question about the fact that you had to buckle down. So you'd have your different textbooks put down ready to study. Maybe you'd have the study guide. This is the time when you really start to gather your material. So if you hadn't already done math before, then you get your math paper. But if you did math already, then you'd kind of be familiar with the format of CSEC. So it's definitely important to gather your material. So gather the textbook, gather the study guides, especially gather the past papers, because that's going to be the main material that you're going to use to prepare for CSEC. And I think that it's also very important that you stay on top of your labs, stay on top of your SBAs. It can be very stressful, and especially for my year where you have a lot of new teachers, or maybe you have different periods of time where you don't even have a teacher.
Oh, that happened at campaign as well?
Definitely.
Really?
That was more so for Cape. Our teacher had left, I think, either mid-September to late September.
Okay.
So there was a period where for biology we had no teacher.
Oh.
And then our vice principal who teaches biology, sometimes she'd have to step in, and a lot of times she'd just assign us work to do, and then we'd have to have the self-discipline to do the work.
Okay.
So there are definitely scenarios that you have to be aware of that can just throw a wrench in your plan. So you definitely have to be dedicated, and you have to be on time again. As I said with the labs, it can be very overwhelming doing 6, 7, 8, 9 subjects and having a lab come with each one or every other one. You have a lot of work to do. Some of them requires teamwork, some of them you have other people doing it with. So you know that sometimes, even if you're not that kind of person, sometimes you have to take the role of a leader and just go through it and then delegate the task. So say, person A, you do this, person B, you do this. You have to keep on going at them, stay on top of that, because you know that this is where you're not in complete control of when the work gets done. So you definitely have to collaborate, and sometimes you have to take that leadership position. And then for other labs where you're doing it by yourself, you know that you have to stay on top of things. So you have to say, okay, today I'm going to dedicate 1 hour to my chemistry lab because this is due by Friday, and then I can dedicate more time to my English lab because this is due by the end of the month.
Okay.
So definitely planning out the time based on the deadlines of each lab is also important in determining how much time you're going to put on it and staying on top of things. Because it wouldn't make sense that I'm spending 2 hours on my English lab due at the end of the month when I have a biology lab or a chemistry lab due at the end of the week.
Okay. You have to prioritize the work as well, right? So did you use like a study timetable?
I didn't really have a study timetable. At the time, I just knew what to study, when to study, because I'd write down, I have a specific homework designated book, so I'd write down when assignments were due and when that was due. So I'd know when to slot out times for the labs for the SBAs, but when it came on to just studying for the subjects, it was just more so based on how comfortable I felt with each subject, and I did it more so by subject topic. So let's say, for instance, you're learning a subject in biology, you're learning ecology.
Yeah.
Ecology was a topic that I was very competent in, very familiar with, so I know that I would spend less time revising ecology than, let's just say, a new topic that would have been brought up in chemistry, like acid-base reactions, for example.
Okay.
So for new content, I knew that, okay, if I'm learning something that's a completely new concept, I would put more time towards that than something that I might be more familiar with.
Okay.
And then just rotating subjects. So sometimes I'd say, I'm going to do biology, chemistry, physics, study that this week. And then next week, I'd practice math, I'd go through IT, I'd go through French. So sometimes it was either recurring, you flip-flop the times, or sometimes it's based on the topic, the density, and how comfortable you're with that specific topic in the subject.
Oh. So during that year in fifth form, were you like engaged in like extracurricular activities as well and sports? You playing sport?
Sports, mainly when it came on to me and sports, I would just try out sports. So I'd try out table tennis, I'd try out swimming, I'd try out track. So I didn't really stay a part of the sports, but I still sometimes try my best to at least involve myself sometimes. But when it comes down to extracurriculars, it's actually mandatory that you do at least 2 extracurriculars at Campion. And it's very important that you do the extracurriculars because that's just going to make your transcript look that much better.
Okay.
So the main extracurriculars I did was animation and photography because I really enjoyed those extracurriculars. It's not something where I felt the need that, because I'm really a STEM student, I have to be a part of biology club, medics club, math club. But I just did extracurriculars that I know that I would enjoy more so rather than those that align with the subjects that I'm doing. So I feel like when you take that approach, then you enjoy it more, you'll be more inclined to be more involved with the club than opposed to, oh, I'm in math club just because I want to do mathematics higher up.
Okay. Alright, so after fifth form, you have gotten all ones.
Yes.
In how many subjects? We don't
9
9 ones. Alright, so, and you would have probably get Caribbean award in some subjects.
Yes, so I came 6th national in chemistry, so 6th in Jamaica. I came 1st in French in Jamaica, and I came 2nd in French in the region. I think for biology I came top 25, and for another subject I came top 25, but I don't remember the subject off the top of my head.
Alright, so once more, congratulations, once more, well done at CSEC. Alright, now some students perform very well at CSEC, but CAPE level is a different discipline. Definitely. And sometimes you're doing less course, sometimes you have more free time, and some students tend to idle a lot. So what was the discipline? Just give me sixth form overall. What was the discipline throughout the 2 years of sixth form? How you managed to maintain the discipline?
I definitely say that the main thing is to not get distracted by the number of subjects you're doing, or to feel that, oh, I'm doing 5 subjects, I'm doing 4 subjects, so it's easier. But to stay consistent, because you recognize very quickly that the subject content is so dense and your teachers will be just running through topics like that. So you definitely have to stay on top of that and be mentally prepared that sixth form, you just have to have it in your mind that sixth form you're in college. Because mainly sixth form does come as prerequisite courses for college. Sometimes you can use your sixth form credits to just completely skip first year of college. So you have to recognize that you're doing college level courses and that it's going to require more dedication from you. Because let's say for fifth form, I know that I was going to bed maybe 9, 10, 11 o'clock. A lot of time when it comes on to sixth form, I was going to bed 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. You'd have students comparing, joking about who got the least amount of sleep. Some students would say, I got 2 hours of sleep, and then another student would be like, I got 1 hour and 30 minutes, so they win the competition. So it's definitely something to be aware of, and you have to be consistent. Sixth form is going to be exponentially harder if you're someone who did not already sit down with the books and study, who did not like doing practice questions. So if you're a consistent student throughout high school, then it will be an easier transition. But if you're not that kind of student, then sixth form will be definitely harder for you, especially if you're doing STEM subjects. So if you're doing sciences, computer science, if you're doing pure mathematics, and even the languages at sixth form level, they're way harder. The languages actually expect you to be able to converse with natives of that language, as opposed to just the hi, how are you, I live at kind of questions that you get at CSEC. So you have to recognize that the jump, it's a very large gap, because it's basically from going from high school to college, and you just have to be consistent. And if you're not a consistent student, then you definitely have to develop those study habits from very early on, because CAPE is just 1 year. CSEC, you can say fifth form, fourth form, third form, you have those times to do it. But CAPE, you have 1 year to do something that requires more content-wise than CSEC, and you have 2 to 3 years to prepare for it. So you have to really mentally engage yourself, you have to mentally prepare yourself. You have to be willing to sacrifice sleep, sacrifice time that you would have spent playing video games or just wasting time. You have to sacrifice that time to get the grades.
Okay. Now, I'm glad you mentioned the point that you guys had like competition who got less sleep. But from some students find like they would have like sleep in the early night when they got home from school, and then wake up like 9, 10 o'clock and study all night, or maybe wake up at 12 and study until daylight. While some students just study from their reach home and till they're ready to sleep like 1 o'clock. Which method did you use and why? The study time?
I kind of did both methods, because some days I would just be so exhausted that as soon as I reach home, I just fell asleep. and then some days I'd have the energy to stay home and study. I would say that I was definitely more energetic at night, so it would have been more favorable if I went home, I went to sleep, and then I woke up and got the work done, because that's why a lot of the times I would have been up at 2, 3 o'clock, because I would have woken up at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Okay.
But I definitely say it depends on the person. So if you're more of a morning person, then it's good to go home, study, maybe go to bed early, and then if you wake up 4 or 5 o'clock, then you can study. When you reach at school, you can continue studying if you're the type of person that gets to school early. So it definitely depends on the type of person. I'm more of a night owl. I know that some people they prefer early morning. So it just really depends on which one fits you more. And then sometimes, again, as I said, the exhaustion really just kicks in and you just have to sleep. So it's also very important to take care of your mental health. I know that during the school year, a lot of students were crying when they got back their test grades, or maybe when they saw their report cards. So it's something that you have to take care of if you need to go to your guidance counselor or talk to a teacher. And also teachers, they're very understanding. Sometimes they're very lenient. So if you get a bad grade, maybe you can talk to the teacher. If you don't understand the subject, you need to express that with the teacher. Because a teacher seeing you put out that effort in a subject, they're going to be more inclined to help you when it comes onto report cards. You're going to get better comments from the teachers because you're someone who engages with the teachers, who demonstrates an interest in the subject. And that's definitely going to do better for your mental health as well.
Okay, alright, well said. Right? So now we have finished both units of K for biology, chemistry, and which other subject you did?
I did biology, chemistry, pure math, French, and then the mandatory course subjects. So for lower 6 it would have been communication studies, and upper 6 it would have been Caribbean studies. So I had 5 subjects.
I got all ones. Alright, congratulations. So you basically did as good as you can get, alright? No. So now you have the requirements to easily walk into any medical school, alright? But I was still want to track back a little about like how you overcome like distractions that some other students might have. So you had admitted, you had said that you didn't really take any form of sporting activity like any full-time like play for the school or anything like that. So you wouldn't have that extra commitment to an extracurricular activity. But did you have like a girlfriend? Because sometimes persons have like a boyfriend or girlfriend, and they can be a source of distraction. At especially like in the move from 5th form to 6th form, most persons tend to want to, what should we say, to kind of just get to know themselves and want to feel like an adult. How did that go for you? Did you have a girlfriend?
I did not have a girlfriend. I didn't really do that because I was mainly focused on my studies. But I do know that a lot of other students during 5th form, 6th form, it's mainly the time that they get in relationships. And I've always believed that it depends on the kind of student you are. So parents, you really have to know your child. So if this is the kind of student that you know, when it comes time to study, they'll study. And if they're spending time with their girlfriend or boyfriend, and you know that they would have already gotten their schoolwork done, they would have already studied, so it's not something that you necessarily have to worry about. And because of the environment at Campion as well, it would be very different from an environment from a different school, because even then when you see the girlfriends and boyfriends and you see them in their relationships, a lot of times you'll see them studying together.
Okay.
You'll see them participating in extracurriculars.
Okay.
So a lot of times you'll find that maybe they both did track, or maybe they're both a part of the same club. So again, it really depends on the type of student you are. If you know that you're easily distracted, if you know that you're the type of person to get swept away in the relationship, then I definitely wouldn't recommend it until college. But if you know that you're the type of student who's dedicated, and if you know that the person who you're interested in, or if the person you're with is also that kind of person, then it definitely helps in collaborating with them, and it'll be less of a hassle to get your schoolwork done with them.
Okay, alright, well said. So you did 2 languages, you did Spanish and French.
Yes, so
alright, so before
I just focus on French past 3rd form. So between the 2 languages,
so it's French. Alright, so what I want you to do before I leave, I just want you to tell the viewers to kindly share, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video in French. Go ahead.
Ok, bonjour tout le monde. Si vous voulez partager le vidéo avec tes amis, aimer le vidéo et abonner à la chaîne.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for coming to the event. Alright, good. I wish you all the best in your studies in the future. Alright, I expected to hear great things. I expected you to be a leader, to make Jamaica proud and your family proud as you keep your head up high, and you can make a very good impact on the world and humanity, and continue helping others with their studies. And I hope you be successful and be whatever you want to become in life with confidence so you can impact the world. Alright? Because as we know, we have more negativity in the world than positivity. So when we have a student, a person that did so well, we have to congratulate you, motivate you, and support you, and continue to do well. Alright? So wish you all the best in the future. And again, I'm very happy that you take the time out to come and share study techniques for science students. So if they want to become a doctor, a nurse, or any other profession in the medical field or healthcare, they will know what it takes to have the requirements for those fields. Alright? So until next time, in office, take care.
Be sure to subscribe for more informative contents on life, sickness, and death.